Mara Ellis sat at the marble kitchen island of her high-rise condo, the warm pendant light above her casting a gentle glow over the room. Everything looked peaceful, almost staged, like the kind of life people imagined she lived. Her husband, Jalen Price, stood at the stove humming softly as he stirred a pot of slow-cooked stew he knew she loved. He wore a forest green apron she had gifted him long ago, the fabric tied neatly around his waist. From behind, he looked like the kind of dependable partner any woman would admire. But peace, Mara had learned, was delicate. It could look perfect on the outside while something inside quietly unraveled. She tried to focus on the open magazine in front of her, flipping pages she wasn't reading. For weeks she had felt something shifting, late nights, hushed calls, new colognes that appeared without explanation. The kinds of changes a woman notices even when she pretends not to. And then it happened. Jalen's phone buzzed on the counter, screen glowing with a soft notification. A message flashed long enough to tilt her entire world. "I miss you." The words came from someone named Cara Bloom. In that moment, something inside Mara didn't break. It simply went still. The kitchen that usually smelled like comfort suddenly felt unfamiliar. The simmering stew, once a symbol of home, now seemed like a disguise covering something rotten beneath. Jalen moved around the kitchen with ease, chopping herbs, tasting broth, adjusting the seasoning. Anyone walking in would have seen a loving husband preparing dinner. Mara saw a stranger moving through her life as if everything was intact. She pretended to skim the magazine again, though her thoughts raced through every detail she had ignored: unexpected work dinners, nights when he claimed exhaustion yet smelled freshly showered, the way his phone was always face down. Individually, nothing incriminating. Together, a pattern she had refused to name. She glanced at the phone again. The screen was dark now, but the message lingered in her mind with brutal clarity. It felt as if the room had been split open. On one side was warmth, on the other, the truth. Jalen hummed, unaware of the storm gathering behind him. Mara exhaled slowly and reached for the phone the moment he stepped away. The lock screen opened with their shared anniversary date, almost mocking in its simplicity. She didn't scroll. She didn't need to. Instead, she typed a message she knew Cara would understand instantly. "Come over. My wife isn't home." The moment she hit send, 2 confirmation marks appeared. Mara forwarded the evidence to her own device, then deleted every trace from Jalen's phone. She placed it back exactly as it had been, leaning it at a familiar angle. Her hands shook, but not from fear. Something else was rising inside her, something firm and controlled. Jalen turned around with a smile, as if nothing in his world had shifted. He served her a generous bowl of rice, and chose the most tender piece of stew for her plate. "Eat while it's hot," he said softly. "I made it just the way you like." Mara lifted her fork, but the food tasted hollow, flavorless. She watched him speak animatedly about a work presentation, a lunch with his supervisor, and some upcoming opportunity he was excited about. He looked vibrant, comfortable, rehearsed in his normalcy. Not a flicker of guilt crossed his face. At one point he reached for her hand and asked, "You okay? You seem tired." She pulled away gently. "Just a long day," she murmured. But the truth was simple. She couldn't bear being touched by dishonesty. A quiet resolve settled over her. The evening was moving towards something irreversible, and she would not stop it. When the gentle chime of the door echoed through the apartment, Jalen froze. His shoulders tightened, his expression clouded with confusion and something closer to dread. "Who would be visiting this late?" he muttered. Mara stood, her posture calm. "I'll get it. Stay here." She walked down the hallway with deliberate steps, each one echoing softly against the hardwood floors. When she opened the door, a young woman stood in the hall, pretty, polished, and wearing a fitted burgundy dress that revealed more than it hid. In her hands, she held a delicate white box with a ribbon wrapped neatly around it. Probably a dessert meant to appear innocent. The moment the woman saw Mara, her painted smile collapsed. Her eyes widened with panic. Behind Mara, she could hear Jalen approaching, calling out casually, Who is it, babe? Mara stepped aside just enough for the woman to see him. Terror flashed across her face. Mara folded her arms. Hello, Kara, she said evenly. Are you here to see my husband? Kara's throat moved as she swallowed. Her fingers tightened on the box until it bent slightly. She couldn't speak. She could barely breathe. Mara's invitation was polite, almost gentle. Please come in. Kara stepped into the apartment like someone entering a courtroom instead of a home. Mara guided her to an armchair. The young woman sat stiffly, as if afraid to touch the furniture. Jalen remained standing near the sofa, visibly shaken. Can I get you something to drink? Mara asked. Water should be fine, right? Kara nodded quickly. In the kitchen, Mara reached past the elegant glassware and intentionally chose a thin, disposable plastic cup, the kind reserved for people who don't belong. She poured water from the tap and returned. She set the plastic cup before Kara, then placed 2 porcelain cups trimmed with gold in front of herself and Jalen. The message was unmistakable. Kara stared at the cup, as if it burned her. Mara crossed her legs and looked at her coolly. So, Kara, how's the internship? Does Jalen treat you well at work? Kara's voice trembled. Yes, ma'am. He's very helpful. Helpful, Mara repeated softly, letting the words stretch. Jalen's jaw tightened. The silence thickened. Mara continued with feigned warmth. We're planning a quiet getaway soon. Just the 2 of us. Married life needs those moments, don't you think? Kara's eyes shimmered with humiliation. Reality was finally carving its place. The moment the door closed behind Kara, the apartment felt heavier than before. Mara stood for a long second, hand still resting on the door handle. She listened to the fading click of Kara's hurried heels. When she finally turned, she found Jalen slumped on the sofa, his head lowered into his hands. He looked small, defeated. In the past, that sight might have cracked her heart. But tonight her heart felt like stone. Mara walked to the coffee table, picked up Jalen's phone, and slammed it against the glass surface. The sound echoed like a violent punctuation mark. Jalen flinched. Mara, please listen. Explain, she said calmly. Explain what you were doing with her. He stood, his voice shaking. It's not what you think. She showed up without telling me. I had no idea she was coming. Mara released a cold laugh. Oh, and the messages? The ones where she tells you she misses you? The ones where you discuss things you never told me. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. She walked to a drawer and pulled out a folder filled with printouts, digital transfers labeled with vague descriptions, screenshots of late-night conversations, excuses and alibis that unraveled instantly under scrutiny. She dropped them onto the sofa beside him. Jalen stared at the pages with trembling hands. Mara, I messed up. I was stupid. It meant nothing. I swear it meant nothing. Mara stepped closer, her voice dropping. It meant something to her. It meant something to you. You lied to me, over and over, and not once did you have the courage to tell the truth. His breath hitched as he tried to defend himself. His shoulders began to shake. Tears spilled down his face. Once, Mara would have reached for him. Tonight, she felt nothing. You know, she said quietly, my love for you used to feel warm, like home. But now it feels spoiled. And I don't consume what has gone bad. She turned away and walked down the hallway. The framed photos hanging along the wall looked unfamiliar now, memories that belonged to people she no longer recognized. Inside the bedroom, she reached for a suitcase she had packed earlier with essentials only. No sentimental items. No shared belongings. Just what was hers. When she returned to the living room with the suitcase rolling behind her, Jalen stood up quickly. Mara, please. Don't leave. I can fix this. I'll do anything. She didn't stop walking. She placed a folded sheet on the coffee table, a document outlining a significant sum her family had once lent them for renovations Jalen insisted they needed. When you sell this place, she said calmly, you'll repay that loan. Fully. Jalen stared at the paper with horror. Mara, please don't do this. I'm begging you. She opened the door, the the cool hallway air brushing her cheeks like a quiet promise of freedom. She didn't look back. Not even once. Outside, her ride was waiting. She stepped in without hesitation. As the city lights blurred past the window, the weight that had been pressing on her chest for weeks began to loosen. Tessa Vance lived in a quiet neighborhood known for its calm streets and even calmer residents. She waited at the entrance of her building when Mara arrived, her arms folded, her eyes sharp enough to read everything Mara did not say. The moment she saw the suitcase, she pulled Mara into a hug that was steady and grounding. Inside her cozy apartment, the scent of lemongrass floated through the air. Tessa handed her a warm cup of herbal tea. "Tell me everything," she said gently. Mara inhaled deeply and recounted the night. Kara's arrival, Jalen's shock, his tears, the evidence, the breaking point. She spoke with an eerie calm, as if narrating someone else's memories. Tessa listened without interrupting once. When Mara finished, Tessa leaned back, her expression composed but fierce. "You handled this better than most," she said. "But if he played games behind your back at work, then work is where we finish this." Her tone sharpened. "We gather everything, every message, every lie, every instance of misconduct. And when we're done, his career will not look the same." For the first time that night, strength flickered inside Mara, quiet but real. The next day became a blur of organization and strategy. Tessa's dining table transformed into a command center filled with printed conversations, bank records, and screenshots. They worked in silence, broken only by the rustle of papers. Tessa approached the task with the precision of someone who had done this before, meticulous, relentless. "We're not sending emotions," she reminded. "Only facts." Mara nodded. By the time morning light filtered through the curtains, the evidence was sorted into a documented timeline. Tessa opened her laptop and pulled up a professionally worded report. It detailed everything: misuse of position, questionable financial interactions, inappropriate communication with an intern. The tone was factual, clear, and impossible to ignore. Mara read the draft, her pulse steady. Tessa placed a hand on her shoulder. "Whenever you're ready." Mara stared at the cursor, hovering over the send button. This wasn't revenge, it was consequence. It was accountability. It was giving truth a voice. She clicked. The message sent without fanfare. No dramatic sound. No flashing alert. Just a small confirmation at the top of the screen delivered. Mara leaned back, exhaling slowly. The air felt different, lighter, clearer, as if she had opened a window after months of breathing stale air. Tessa watched her silently, then nodded with approval. "Good," she whispered. That was the first step. Word reached them quickly through a colleague of Tessa's who worked in the same company. Jalen had been called into a meeting with human resources early in the day. Inside the glass-walled conference room, he was confronted with printed evidence he couldn't refute: transfers, messages, receipts, timelines. According to the colleague, he attempted to explain, but his voice broke under pressure. His supervisors watched him in silence. Nothing he said could erase what was documented. Eventually, suspension was announced. The colleague reported seeing him escorted back to his desk to gather his belongings while co-workers watched in stunned silence. And Kara, her meeting came shortly after. Reports said she tried everything: denial, blame, tears. None of it changed the outcome. Her internship was terminated by the end of the afternoon. Tessa read each update aloud while Mara listened without expression. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. Justice didn't require celebration. It required clarity. She had given truth its place. Now it was doing exactly what truth does: exposing, reshaping, correcting. As the weeks rolled forward, Mara stayed with Tessa while she sought a new beginning. They filled their evenings with long conversations, soft music, and moments of silence that didn't feel heavy. Tessa became anchor and strategist, reminding Mara of her strength when she forgot. One morning, Mara received a message from a lawyer she had contacted. The divorce proceedings could move forward. She nodded and agreed. The hearing was held in a modest courtroom. Jalen looked worn and exhausted, as if carrying the weight of his choices had drained him. He barely met Mara's eyes. Tessa sat beside her, poised and steady. The evidence was presented cleanly, no emotion, no theatrics, just truth. When it came to the condo, Jalen tried negotiating to keep it, promising slow repayment. Mara declined. She had already carried enough of him. In the end, the property was listed quickly. After all obligations were settled, including the family loan Jalen had avoided for so long, very little remained for him. Mara accepted her portion without sentiment. The chapter was closing. Jalen stood alone outside the courthouse as Mara stepped into a waiting car. He didn't call out. He didn't chase her. Silence became their final goodbye. Using her portion from the sale, Mara moved into a new home on the quiet edge of town. It was smaller but bright, peaceful, and entirely hers. She filled it with plants, soft colors, and gentle morning light. It felt like breathing for the first time after years of holding air in her chest. Tessa helped her decorate, insisting on candles that smelled like eucalyptus and linen curtains that let sunlight in just right. They laughed more than Mara expected, soft, unexpected moments of joy rising between them. One afternoon, Mara received a message from her manager. She was being offered a leadership position. It was a role she had worked toward quietly for years. She accepted with steady pride. Standing in her new living room, she felt something deep inside shift. Freedom didn't always shout. Sometimes it arrived like a quiet breath, unnoticed until it filled the entire body. She cooked herself a small celebratory dinner. No elaborate stew, no performance. Just something simple, comforting. She ate alone, and for the first time, the silence felt peaceful instead of empty. Later that night, she walked out onto her balcony. The air felt soft against her skin. Below her, the city moved with its usual rhythm, unaware of her transformation. She smiled, small but genuine. Mara realized she was no longer defined by betrayal, marriage, or heartbreak. She was defined by how she rose, how she chose herself, how she walked away from what tried to diminish her. Looking back, she understood that losing Jalen was never the tragedy she once feared. It was the doorway, a doorway leading her to strength, clarity, and a self she had not met before. Freedom doesn't always arrive gently. Sometimes it walks in after a storm, settles beside you, and whispers, "You survived." Thanks for watching. If you value stories of respect, dignity, and justice, please subscribe. It means more than you know, and it lets me keep sharing the lessons life has carved into me.